I've got around 40 tips and tricks to share with you today, from beginner's tips to advanced tips to tips that even top 500 players don't even know a lot of the time. I've played this game for around 1,500 hours. I've played since launch. I've been top 500 since Season 4. I've watched Overwatch League. I've watched hundreds of hours of high-level gameplay from Twitch streams. I've got a pretty good idea of a lot of this stuff, and I've got some killer tips to share with you today. All right, let's just get right into it. Let's start with a tip that a lot of higher level players know and a lot of lower level players don't realize this is how it works. So say somebody's chasing you away from your team and you get separated like this, and there's no way for you to get back into the fight and get past them, and you feel like it's pretty much over. Now, a lot of lower level players in this scenario will either try to get past them anyway and just die, or they'll just fight it out immediately and just die. And if the fight is still raging, then you don't want to do that. If there's still a good chance your team can win the fight, you want to get them to chase you and drag out your death as long as possible. You need to know every single second that you get them to chase you instead of dying is a second that they are out of the fight, which makes your team more likely to win. So rather than try to run back out and die no matter what to try to get back to my team, if you make that call that there's no way you're going to do that, instead just make a run for it and get them to chase you. And if you can get them to chase you, then you effectively have killed that player until you're dead, because they're not in the fight. They should have just killed you and turned around and then easily won. But if you drag it out for 15 seconds of them chasing you, you run through this passageway, they're still on you and you're fighting back, and then you die, it's basically as if you had killed that player that time, like during that time period. Higher level players know this. They'll drag out their deaths as much as possible within reason. The only thing you got to be careful of is you don't want to get staggered. So if the fight is over, then you don't do this. If the fight is over, you fight it out. And there's a lot of nuance with that. We'll get to that in some of the later tips. But yeah, if the fight is still going on, drag out your death as long as you can. If the fight has ended, then just get it over with so you can reset, get back to your team, and don't get staggered. The next tip is payload maps. Now, this is a really basic tip, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know this. I want to make sure you are aware of this, especially because there's a lot of new players coming to Overwatch 2 right now since it's free to play. So the payload, there's maps with this. This is called the payload. It looks different on different maps. When you're on it, it moves. Everyone should know that. Well, here's the thing that some newer players don't know, is that the more players that are on it, the faster it moves. There's a cap on it, however, where 3 players is the limit. So with 1 player, it moves at a certain speed. With 2 players, it moves faster. With 3 players, it moves as fast as it can possibly move. So keep that in mind. If there's a time where you wipe the enemy team and you're very close to the objective, you want to tell your team in comms, 3 on the payload, 3 on the payload, get 3 on, 3 on, 3 on. I say that all the time. That's a really important thing to know about. This next tip is one that I even see at top 500 players who don't realize this is happening. So I'm sure you've been here if you've played Overwatch enough, where you died, but your fight is still going on out there, your team's still fighting, and you need to get back as fast as you possibly can. And you feel that panic, you feel that rush, you want to get back as fast as you can. Well, there's a lesson I learned from playing racing games of all things that actually applies to Overwatch, which is, in video games, the shortest path to get back to where you're going. First off, you need to know the shortest path for each map, but that's different than this tip. So when you're heading out of spawn, you might find yourself walking something like this, right? You wouldn't think anything of this. You're just heading out of spawn and getting back. Well, that was actually slow. You can save a second or two, which is a big deal in a game like Overwatch, by aiming for the corner of where you're going for each transition. So for the first spot in this, I would walk right towards this corner so that I save time. If you come out straight and then turn, you're losing distance. It's unnecessary loss of distance, and it seems trivial, but it'll save you a lot of time getting back. So then the next point would be right here and jumping over this. And then from here, you would look straight here and walk perfectly straight into this line, right into the corner like this. And once you cross that, you're going to look straight like this. Once you cross this, depending which way you're going to go, you're either going to look straight here or straight here. And that little bit, it seems trivial, but it'll actually save you, depending on the map, because this was kind of a bad example for it, but depending on the map, it could save you half a second all the way up to like 3 seconds, depending on the map. Because a lot of players, they'll go back from spawn, and they'll literally loop out this far and just be kind of walking aimlessly. You'll lose a significant amount of time doing that, so keep that in mind. This next one applies to all ranks, but I see this most often at lower ranks. There's a lot of players who get stuck in lower ranks because they randomly throw away a game that could have been winnable. And what I mean by that is there's a scenario where players will throw their games. And if you're watching, you may know who you are. And you're not doing it because you want to throw. You'll do it because you think someone else on your team is throwing, and then you basically just give up and quit, and you effectively throw. I see this happen all the time at lower ranks. It's really a common thing that people do, especially when there's a pick they don't agree with, and they're like, oh, we've got a Symmetra. It's all over. I can't win because of Symmetra. Well, guys, see you next match. And they'll literally do that. I've seen that happen in so many games, and if you want to win as many matches as possible, do not do this. The majority of times, the player is not throwing. The majority of times, the player's either having a bad game or they are just doing their best and it's not working out, or it just looks like they're throwing and they're not. Unless you actually see someone like looking at you. I mean, you'll have times where someone's really throwing. They'll look at you, they'll shoot at you, you're looking at them, and they just jump off the map. That kind of thing, then they're really throwing, you know. And there is soft throwing, but you should never assume someone's throwing. Most of the time, they are trying and they're just having a really bad match. So don't do that if you actually want to climb in Overwatch. While we're on that same topic of throwing, this next one's also very important. I see it a lot in all ranks, not just lower. I see this one in all ranks, and it's really important to know about if you want to be really good in top 500 someday. Is if you're getting so mad in the comms, if you're arguing with someone and it's just not working out, if you're so furious that you're going to throw the game because you're mad, don't do that. Instead, you need to actually just leave the voice channel and leave the text chat. Don't let it get to you. Don't get so mad you throw. That's literally just trolling, and that's just going to cost you SR in the long run. It's a silly thing to even do. Just leave the voice chat. Which then brings me to another tip, which is you don't have to be in voice chat and text chat. These are not required to play Overwatch. Now, I meet so many people who couldn't even fathom not joining voice. It sounds ludicrous to them. They think that if you do that, you will lose no matter what. I can tell you right now, as someone who's been 4,400, 4,500 without joining voice, it is not required. So if you're having a bad day and you're just expressing that to your teammates and things, don't bother. You don't need to do it. If you want to do it, join it. If you don't want to do it, don't join it. If people are being obnoxious and you don't click with the people in your group that the random RNG voice chat you got into, just leave it. Just play the game. It's better to focus on playing good than it is to try to coordinate with people that you don't get along with, start fighting, and then everyone play like crap. It happens all the time. If you start fighting with people, everyone's distracted, no one's going to play good. So do whatever you need to do for you in order to perform and play good for your team. This next one is one that higher level players absolutely know, and I see a lot of lower level players who refuse to accept this one. It's very important. You, as an individual, absolutely have control over the games in the long run. If your skill gets good enough, you won't even hardly need your team in order to win the match. There's a lot of ways you can do this, like some of the tips in this video, like getting people to chase you so that they're down 2 people during a fight and staying alive in situations where you otherwise wouldn't have. DPS is the obvious one, you know, oh, you just hard carry, you kill everyone, right? Whatever. But even as support, you can climb, you can do it all solo queue. It's absolutely doable. But something important, which brings me to another tip, which is you have to think about the long run when playing Overwatch. So it's not about, oh, I get good enough, I win every match. It's, if I get good enough, I'll win 60% of my matches. And if you win 60% of your matches, you'll climb consistently. And over time, you'll eventually go higher and higher and higher and higher. So focus on your individual skill. At lower ranks, your individual skill is all that really matters. If you're at a lower rank, there's a lot of room for improvement on your end, so focus on that, and focus on getting better, and then your team will benefit from that. Now, this next one, again, is one that most high-level players know, and a lot of lower-level players don't understand the nuance and importance of this next one. So, when should you contest the point versus running away? So this exact map, this is a good example. Say I'm defending right now, and we're fighting it out on the point, and the point is basically lost. There's no way to hold on to the point. It's guaranteed it's over. And I'm, say, coming back from spawn right now. I'm right here, and I get that choice. Do I go in and jump on the point for 1 second, or do I just run away and reset? I actually am in a position where I will get away if I leave, or I go in. And there's nuance to this. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer to this, but the way that you make the decision is based upon a few factors. One is how long can I actually stall this out? And that depends a lot on what character you are. Like, if you are Hammond and they only have, like, 3 guys on point, you might be able to swing out there and stall it out for 12 seconds or something. Every second you take off the clock, it matters. So if that's how it's going to be, that's good. Another scenario is you go out and they have 5 on point and you die instantly. As, say, Hammond, who has 600 HP, that's bad because you just fed them alt charge and you only got, say, 1 second off the clock. So you kind of have to weigh how much alt charge are you giving them versus how much time you're shaving off the clock. That's kind of how you make the decision. And if you think you're not going to shave any time off the clock but feed them 300, 200, 600 HP of alt charge to their damage characters, just turn around and go the other way. That's really important to know, to weigh that alt charge versus time bank loss on their side. So that's how you do make that decision, and you have to be aware of that decision. And on that same note, it's important to think about contesting the payload when it's in motion for one of these, for example, where you can do the thing where, say, your whole team's dead and you're behind them, and you know they don't know you're here, and they leave one guy on cart. It could be a viable option, depending on the scenario, to sneak up on the cart and hang out like this. It'll stop moving. And depending on your rank, they may not even notice for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or even 20 seconds or some insane amount of time. Higher ranks, they tend to notice right away. Lower ranks, you may be sitting there, and the guy will not even realize the payload's not moving for like 10 seconds, and then be like, wait a minute. And then you get in a fight with someone, and you're stalling it out, and then you die. So be aware that is an option, and it's not always a bad option. But you have to weigh that against getting staggered. So if you wait too long, you go out, and then you only get like 2 seconds off, and then you die, and now your whole team has been respawned for 5 seconds, but now you are dead, and you're like off sync. Now your team has to wait another 10 to 15 seconds before we're all back together, and that can kind of, cause some damage too for your end on getting set up and getting ready to fight and re-engage and all that. So you kind of got to weigh those 2 options depending on what you think you can get away with, and it depends on what character you are too. Like, if you're Hammond, you can just do it and you can just leave afterwards and not even risk anything. If you're like Brig, you can stall it out real hard. There's only one person on it or something like that. So just consider that. That's definitely a thing. Be aware that can help if you do it correctly. And while we're on that topic, I want to drive home the point of what is getting staggered and why does it matter. So if your team is all dead and you're still alive, now you just want to get it over with and go down too, because if you get off time with them, you'll get in a scenario where, say, they're going to recontest, so the enemy's on the point, but we're able to get back in. We got 4 of us here, they got 5, and our Mercy just ran off for 20 seconds before dying, and she hasn't even respawned yet. We're just down Mercy. Whereas if Mercy would have seen it coming and saw that the fight was already over and just ran in and died and stalled the point and then died, then she would respawn with the team and you'd come back as 5 people instead of 4. So that's what staggers are. So be aware of that and don't let that happen. But also you got to know when to try to do something fancy or when to just, go on the point and let them kill you basically and then reset with everyone else. All right, the next tip is kind of beginner to intermediate, but more beginner. These are health packs, guys, and you need to get these. No matter what class you are, no matter what character you play, it doesn't matter if you're tank, support, or damage, you need to know where all these health packs are, and is it a small health pack or a big one? This is the small one. It heals, I think it was 80, and the big ones heal 200. That's also a small one. I don't know where the next big one is, but so knowing where as many of these are as possible will help you so much, and you need to be aware of using them in a fight. So you can plan out, a high-level player will plan out a fight around a health pack when appropriate. So if I'm fighting and somebody flies in on me and they're right in front of me, I will fight back to this health pack, hoping that I will get the health pack in the middle of the fight, and now it's as if I had 280 HP instead of 200 because of grabbing that in the middle of the fight. And even as a support, say I'm flying in from wherever I was, someone's chasing me, I'm very low, I grab the health pack, I'm slightly more likely to live in this engagement now. Health packs can save anyone's life, and knowing how to plan your micro fights around them, your little skirmishes every moment of the game around these, can make you a significantly better player. The next tip is high ground advantage. So this one has a lot of nuance to it, but generally it's better to be on the high ground than it is to be on the low ground. And this is kind of a concept for video games in general, And the reason for this is it's easier to go down than it is to go up. If I'm low HP, I can go in here. They can't get to me. If I'm low HP down here, they just follow me. You know, so whereas if the other way, they'd have to, depending on the character, they'd have to go all the way around through here. Now, obviously, in a game like Overwatch, high ground is not as powerful as some other games because a lot of characters have vertical mobility, but it's still, generally speaking, better to be on high ground than it is to be on low ground. Now, it depends on the map and stuff, but that's also why on some maps, defenders have big advantages, because on some maps, defenders have a higher vantage point to shoot down onto the enemy. You can also get head peeks with it, where when I'm looking down at them, they're out in the open and they're showing their whole body, which is a bigger hitbox, but when they're looking at me, when I'm doing this, they can only see the upper half of my body, basically just my head. So that also helps you out tactically if you don't know that from other shooter games. While we're on the topic of verticality, it's important to think about swapping characters for maps with a lot of verticality. Now, this map in particular right here does not have a lot of verticality, but if you go over to the second point, you'll see there's a ton of verticality. So even within one map, you may play a certain comp on the first point where it's all flat, and then you get to the second point where there's all this verticality, and now you may want to swap to Genji or Hanzo or D.Va or somebody who can get up and contest the high ground. They can jump off. They can go up again once their cooldown's back. They can be wherever they want to be. And if you don't play like that on a map with a lot of verticality, you'll get punished unless you're full committed to it and you've got some comp that's going to stick together like a unit and, you know, shoot them whenever they peak. But high ground, again, has kind of an advantage. So maps like this, maps like, I can't remember the name of it. It's not Hollywood, but well, Hollywood is a little bit of verticality, second point. But there's just a lot of maps that have situations like this where verticality is very, very important. So consider swapping when you're on a map or part of a map that has tons of verticality. All right, this next one is more so for beginner, advanced level play, but not for, you know, the really good players already know this. It's called back capping. And I know a lot of you know this, but some of you don't know what a back cap is or when to do it. So back capping is when, say, in the middle of the fight, I got back here, I'm the attacker, and I need to get on that point. They don't know I'm here. They don't realize I'm here. They all run back to go hold the choke. I can then sneak out and get on the point and start capping it. Now, this is generally better for payloads because there's a lot of time to get a third of a point cap on one of these. So if the payload was right by the door, it was like 2 meters away and they beat you, and they didn't notice that they didn't kill everyone and you're hiding somewhere, they all get off the payload, and then you sneak out of a door somewhere, get on it, it moves from here to there, and then suddenly you cap second point. Things like that can happen, and different characters can force it almost, but with any character, if you got separated and they don't realize, you can kind of make it happen, which in lower ranks that'll happen a lot. At higher ranks, the only way you're really going to do it that often is with a character that's designed to do it, like Sombra or Hammond. But be aware that back capping is a thing. Even at high ranks, it happens all the time. There's a nickname for it in Overwatch called C9, because C9 getting off the point to a D.Va bomb once, and then losing. But it's, yeah, you know, you might hear your team yell C9, C9, or point, because someone is back capping. Be aware of that. You can do that. You can win games because of that. The next tip I want to give you is about communication in voice chat. When you are communicating with your team, it's important to focus on a few different things. So one of them is to be clear and concise. When you listen, if you've ever listened to Overwatch, League comms, or anyone who plays in a professional setting, it's about saying as few words as possible to clearly get the point across as you can. So, for example, you can say Orisa on cart, or you can say tracer behind. You don't need to say there's a tracer behind us on our health pack to the back right. That's really unnecessary. You just say tracer behind, tracer on our mini, Orisa on point, something like that. And that helps a lot, and that allows you to repeat it too, because it's important to say it more than once in some cases to make sure people heard it. So you can go Orisa on cart, tracer behind, tracer behind, tracer behind. You'll hear people say that if you ever listen to like Twitch streams of the high level play. That's the type of thing people do all the time. Now, another one that I have when we're talking about comms is that it's important to give the correct call for health. A lot of players do this. Even at high ranks, people do this all the time. I can't even count the number of times I've seen in GM top 500 games, someone gets their teammate killed because of this call. So say I'm shooting at Lucio. Now he is at half HP. So if I was going to say I did that and then he forced me away, I'd say Lucio half, Lucio half. And if someone else hears that and they think, oh, Lucio at half, I can take away half his HP. I'll go in now. And someone else will go in assuming your call was correct. Whereas if I shoot him enough to get him low, then I would say, if he was like down here, I'd say Lucio low, which means he's really low on HP, right? That means someone goes in and they barely have to do anything and they'll kill him. Now, a lot of players will mess this up and they'll say they're low or they're 1. So low, 1's another call that you might also interchange with that last one, which is when he's like really, really low. You'll say Lucio 1, which would be like here. And you're like Lucio 1, Lucio 1. And that means you do almost anything to him and he's dead. Well, a lot of players will get a character to right around half and they'll say Lucio 1, like he's 1 HP. And all the time I'll see people do this. And then someone will just jump in and commit to the fight thinking Lucio's 1. And then they'll die because they didn't have the resources to kill like a half or full HP Lucio. They went in with the expectation that he's 1 HP. And they thought they'd be able to kill him when he's 1 HP. So be aware of that call. You can actually bait your teammates into dying if you get it wrong. And I've seen people lose games because of that. The next thing I want to talk about is strafing. So if you're being shot at, you should know, and this is really for the lower level players, but even to mid to high level players need to know a little nuance about the best way to do this. So it's called strafing. If you've never played shooter games, what I'm doing right now is called strafing. Doing this makes me way harder to hit. So you'll see at low ranks a lot of times, players will just stand there or they'll move a little bit and then shoot and stand still like this. And every time you stop moving, it's very easy to get hit. What good players do is they do something like this while they're fighting, or depending on who they're fighting, they may even add crouching into the spam and do something like this. Which makes, as you can see, if someone's trying to hit me in the head, doing this can make it extremely difficult to hit me in the head. So doing this in a fight will make you way harder to kill. So learn how to strafe, learn how to do little micro strafes. Overwatch has no acceleration speed, so the strafing in Overwatch is the hardest to hit out of any video game, any modern like mainstream video game, any modern mainstream shooter game. So keep that in mind. Knowing your strafes and how to do them correctly in Overwatch will definitely win you games. A funny thing that you can do at lower ranks is stopping the cart repeatedly with certain characters. Sombra and Hammond are the ones we talked about this a little bit earlier. So say this payload's in motion and it's moving along. At lower ranks especially, you can do this a lot. You can just sneak up on it as Hammond, and then wait till they notice you, and then roll away. And then once they get off it again, you just roll back and stop it again. And it may seem trivial, it may seem like you're just trolling, but it actually will stall their push so much at lower ranks if they don't notice. I played with my friend before on console where it was a lot lower rank, and I was able to go with Hammond like that. They probably lost 2 minutes on a lot of the games to me just stopping it for 5 to 10 seconds at a time like that. But you do have to be aware that if you're doing that, you're not with your team, so it's like there's nuance between should you, shouldn't you. But in some scenarios, you can do that, and you can win games by just eating away at their time bank. All right, now we're going to get to a higher level tip. Most high level players should know this one, but if a lot of lower level players don't even think about this, so you need to think about this in Overwatch. So in Overwatch, we have what's called ultimate abilities. Obviously, you should know this if you've played it just even a little bit. Well, the way that these charge is simply by healing people or by doing damage to people. So if you do damage to the enemy team and they heal it, that's going to feed the ults of their support characters, like Lucio, like Moira, like Mercy. When I heal her, I get ult charge for it. So if you are going to do damage to someone, you have to weigh the benefits and costs of that. If you need your ultimate, don't worry about it. You just do damage, it doesn't matter. But if you have your ult and you're going to shoot someone and you know for a fact you're not going to kill them and they're just going to get healed, you may want to consider just leaving and waiting for the rest of your team, because every damage you do, every point of damage you do is going to be a little bit of ult charge to their supports. And if their supports get ults before the next fight when they otherwise wouldn't have, now they're more likely to win that fight because they have beat drop, they have transcendence, they have coalescence, or whatever. So be aware that the damage you're doing is charging ult, and be precise. Either get the kill or don't if you already have ult. And on that same note, we have the reverse. Say you have a tank who's no matter what going to die. Your tank already has ult. You're trying to run away from the fight and you're losing, and you're healing the tank as you run away. Say Moira's a tank and I'm just running away and we're both running away being chased, and I'm healing him and healing him and healing him, but we both know we're going to die no matter what. If I already have my ult, you may want to do it if you don't have your ult, you can charge your ult, that's fine. But right now, I already have my ult. If I'm doing that, I'm literally just feeding ultimates for the enemy. Every time Lucio's shooting Moira, he's charging his ult. So if you are healing someone who's going to die no matter what, in like a runaway situation where you're running off to the edge of the map together, you may want to consider just dying. You're going to have to play it by ear, but high-level players know how to make those decisions, and learning how to make those decisions will help you be more likely to win your games. This next one I don't have a good way to demonstrate in here, but it's really important in the long run to learn roughly the cooldown of every ability in the game. So when people use their abilities, there's a cooldown. It's different for everybody, and the reason why it's important to know is that allows you to know what you can and can't do. If you are chasing someone and they've already used their dash or their movement ability, and you know they use their movement ability, then you know how long you have to get on them, and they won't be able to get away. So if Sojourn has done that dash and then jump away ability, and you know that, and you know the cooldown's like 8 seconds or 12, whatever it is, well, now you have a little bit of time then, be like, okay, I've got a little bit of time to get in position. All right, she probably has about 5 seconds left. Now I engage, and she cannot get away from me, or she cannot hit me with whatever ability, or he can't use whatever ability for another 3 seconds, 7 seconds, 5. So knowing those timers is a huge thing in high-level play. At high-level play, they'll play around the timers, especially longer ones. So like Mercy's res is 30 seconds. Baptiste's immortality field is 30 seconds. In high-level games, they will actually go in and then go out and then say, okay, Bap has no immortality field. Next fight, they won't be able to use it, and they'll play expecting that. They'll play around knowing that. Same thing for res. This next one's one that will apply to people at any rank. Very few people do this, but when they do, it changes everything. So, this is for communication in voice comms. When you're playing the game and you need help or you need to communicate something about your character, don't say me. Most players will say me, and when you say that, it means that you're going to have to look up at the top left of your screen to try to see who is talking. And some players don't have issues with that. Some players just are able to do that while playing seamlessly, but a lot of players, it's a distraction to have to try to look up and figure out who it is. And some players don't look at all and then try to guess who me is, because they don't know your voice. When they hear me talk, they don't know I'm playing Mercy, and they have no idea who it is. So if I say, help me, help me, help me, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows who help me is. There's 5 people, I don't know who me is. So the best thing that you can do, and if you can learn this, you'd be amazed how much it can help your gameplay. If, say right now, I'm playing as Mercy. If I need help, I will say, help your Mercy, or help Mercy, help Mercy, help Mercy. Or help Mercy behind, or some direction as well, in order to help them figure out where you are. But saying my name makes it very obvious who I am. Same thing for when you need heals. If you're playing as McCree, or sorry, it's Cassidy now. If you're playing as Cassidy, you say, heal Cassidy, heal Cassidy. The supports will no matter what know who it is that desperately needs a heal, and then be like, where is he, where is he, where is he? Oh, there he is. Whereas if you say, heal me, good luck. It's just a crapshoot whether or not they actually are able to figure it out before you're dead. This next one is about the edges of the map. So if you're a character who has what's called a boop, Lucio has one, Brigitte has one, a lot of characters have one. Some characters have, like Roadhog has a hook, which you can also use to do something like this. What it is that if you can do something that knocks a character back or displaces a character, and that leads to them falling off the map, then it will give you alt charge for all their remaining HP. So say there's a character with 600 HP, and you're Roadhog, and you hook him, and you turn to the side like this, and he falls off the map, even though he had, say, 550 HP left afterwards, it will count as you shot him down for 550 HP and charge a massive amount of your ultimate ability. And on the same note, be aware of booping people off the map if you're a new player. Booping people off the map is a great way to win a fight. If you start a fight by knocking 2 people off the map, you pretty much win no matter what in most cases. This next one is hero specific, but you need to be aware of this because you'll see it a lot in your Overwatch career. It's what's called an anti-heal. Now, the most prominent one is Ana's grenade. And when you're anti'd, you'll see this purple around their health bar, or whatever around your own health bar at the bottom left. And what that does is makes it so the target who got anti'd cannot be healed until it's gone. Now, when I made this video, there's only 2 characters that can do that. There's Ana with her nade, and there's Junker Queen with her ult. And soon there'll be Kiriko in ladder, or competitive play, and she'll be the first character that can cleanse an anti. But be aware of this mechanic, because if you're a tank or you're a DPS, especially a tank though, and you got anti-naded, you need to be aware that you cannot be healed suddenly. So if you were like playing with someone healing you actively, and you're playing expecting that healing to continue and you get hit by an anti-nade, if you don't realize you got hit by an anti-nade and you just keep face tanking, you'll just die. And good supports will actually try to tell you, and they'll be like, Ryan, you're anti'd, Ryan, you're anti'd, back up, back up, back up, or something like that to try to warn you. But it also helps if you yourself are aware and know without being told. It will definitely help the game a lot. High-level players are always aware of when they got anti-naded, and they'll play accordingly. This next one, I can't show you how I wanted to show you because custom games are messed up right now, and I can't do push maps for some reason, but in the new game mode push maps, there's something you should be aware of. I wouldn't try it until you're at higher level play, and even then, it's just something I want you to be aware of more than you actually should be trying to make it happen, which on push maps, you know, you push the robot back and forth. Say it's almost overtime and they pushed it all the way to your spawn, but you still are winning. You're going to win if, say you got like 110 meters, they got 105, and they're right by your spawn. You got them off. You got like 15 seconds left. Just don't push it, because then they have to go across the entire map to get back to you. Whereas if you push it, you're guaranteed to, you know, get it close enough to them for them to recontest. Now, I wouldn't actually try to force something like that in a game, especially at lower rank, but just be aware that will be a mechanic that exists in push, and it could determine the fate of a game. This next tip is for contesting in overtime. So first off, when you're in overtime, overtime is triggered when somebody from the enemy team is on a point contesting, or someone from the losing side, I should say, is on the point when there's no time left. It'll trigger overtime. Overtime will last until the winning side, or depending on what the game mode is able to get them off the point. If Lucio's attacking this point and we're defending, it will go into overtime until I kill him. If we run out of time and he's on this square, we'll get overtime, and it'll stay like that until he is either off the point or we kill him. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is not just to educate you about what overtime is. The reason I'm telling you is if you are in a position where you're on the losing team and you need to contest the point in order to stall out overtime, you don't have to stay on, depending on how overtime is, which will bring me to another tip in a second. Early on in overtime, you can actually just get on and then get off, and it'll refresh the bar, and the bar will take like 2 seconds to tick down. So depending on the character you are and stuff, you could come out and tap it, and then run back in, and then come out and tap it, and then run back in order to keep it in overtime, instead of just standing there like a sitting duck. But also be aware, the next thing I was going to tell you about overtime, the amount of time that you can get off the point and have it still be overtime, that amount of time goes down the longer you are in overtime. So at first, you could just go like this, and you could literally have this long to get back on the point, and it would still stay in overtime. But if it's been in overtime for like 3 minutes, you'll get off the point and it's over. It'll literally go it'll go in like a fourth of a second once it's been long enough. I've seen games that have been in overtime for like 6 minutes. And when it was like that long, it was literally, they got off, it was over. It literally was like a tenth of a second after that long. So be aware that that amount of time goes down the longer you're in overtime. All right, I swapped up maps for this one to make a point about something. So be aware that certain heroes are exceptionally good on certain maps. For example, Widowmaker is good on First Point Junkertown because there are such long sight lines that she can get all the way back here and she can shoot people who are extremely far away, and it's very hard for them to do anything about it unless they also have a sniper. There's also scenarios like Moira on King's Row and various other matchups on different maps where certain characters have an advantage. So be aware of the different characters that work well on different maps, learn them over time, and consider playing them when you get a map that is meant for them. The next tip is being aware of the new ping system in Overwatch 2. I personally have not actually mastered using it just yet because I'm not used to it. Overwatch 1 didn't have it, but the pings are actually kind of better than even communicating with your voice. If you ping, it'll tell them what hero and where, clearly. Now, if, say, a Widow is over where I pinged, if I try to say Widow to the right in the back, like, there's no good way to describe. She's on the corner to the right by the edge of the map. Like, there's so many words I have to throw out to try to describe her being right there. But if I actually target on her with my crosshair and ping, it will show her icon and that is such helpful information for your team. At lower rank, it'll be less helpful because people are less aware, but as you climb, it'll become more and more helpful to ping enemies who are in spots that people need to be aware of, like a tracer behind. You know, you can say tracer behind and pinger, and now your team turns around to try to find her. They don't try to look for her. They turn around, they see the ping, go, okay, she's over there, and then they make a decision about what they want to do. The next thing I want to talk about is counterplay. Counterplay is a huge part of Overwatch, and you need to be aware of that. Now, there's hard counters and there's soft counters. Now, a hard counter would be something like Zenyatta's Transcendence is the hard counter to Genji's Dragon Blade. If they have a Genji and he's going to blade your team, if you have Transcendence, then your Zen's you're gonna get in this kind of standoff with the Genji where like the Zen doesn't want to use Transcendence till the Genji blades, and the Genji doesn't want to blade till Zen uses Transcendence. I've seen games before where both teams went the entire 4 minutes where neither character used their ult because they were both calling each other's bluff, and then neither one used their ult the entire game. So those are that's like a hard counter to the one to the other. Then there's soft counters. One example, just 'cause I'm looking at it, is Mercy is actually a soft counter to Widow at higher level. And now the reason I say soft counter is because during most gameplay, Mercy is just kind of a target for Widow. It's whatever. But if Mercy has her Valkyrie, Mercy can catch the Widow off guard, come and fly in from the side, and shoot her while she's scoped in and kill her. Now, it's not like a counter that's like a 100% of the time counter, but it's something where when the situation arises, Mercy can actually hard counter Widow in a moment, like in a small micro fight. So it's like a soft counter. Another soft counter was old Brig, who had a stun with her bash, was like a soft, almost hard counter to Genji. And there are just a lot of counters like that in Overwatch. So the more counters that you learn, the better you'll be able to play Overwatch. Another thing you need to be aware about is CC immunity. Some characters cannot be stunned or, well, mainly just stunned or knocked back with some of their abilities. The one that comes to mind first is Orissa's Fortify. When she does this for about 5 seconds, you can't stun her, you can't knock her back, you can't use Sleep Dart on her. Another CC immunity, for example, is Zarya's Bubble. When she uses this bubble, you can't CC her unless you break the bubble. So be aware that some characters have that, learn which ones have it, and then don't, waste your cooldowns if they're currently CC immune. Another thing to tell you about is that there's a thing in Overwatch called armor. Now, armor's kind of been phased out of the game a little bit. There used to be a lot more characters that would give armor to their teammates, but there's still characters that have armor built into their HP, or characters that give armor. For example, Briggs, actually, I don't know if it gives armor or shield. They might have changed it because it's green instead of yellow, or I think green, I don't know. Either way, I'm down my health bar at the bottom. You see those 2 yellow bars? That's armor. I know that one's armor for sure. Now, armor got reworked in Overwatch 2, and what armor does is for that section of HP, you'll take 30% less damage. Now, there's no overflow, so if you have 10 armor left on your HP, and you take 100 damage, it's not going to reduce it by, down to 70. It's only going to reduce it, 30% is going to get reduced from that 10 that you lost, and then the rest is going to overflow like the normal damage. So don't think it's going to work like that. But be aware that some characters have armor. If it feels like you're not doing a lot of damage to a character like Rhine or Brig, it could just be because they were full HP and still had their armor, and you're trying to burn through that. The next thing you need to know about in Overwatch is that damage boosts are a thing. There are a bunch of different damage boosts. For example, this is Baptiste's ultimate. It makes it so any projectile that goes through it does double the damage. There's also Zenyatta, who has Discord, which makes the target receive more damage. There's Mercy, where her secondary fire will damage boost a target. So there's a lot of different ways to increase or decrease damage taken. For example, Sombra can hack somebody, and afterwards she'll do additional damage to them. So be aware that you're not always going to receive the exact same amount of damage. You need to know all the characters and what they do. And once you do, you'll know when you're going to get burned down faster or slower. And that really matters to, for when you're making decisions about should I go in, should I not go in. Knowing if they have a Discord orb or they have a damage boost could help you make that decision correctly. The next one is to be aware of time. Now, you can't see it right now because I haven't officially started this match, but they'll have a time bank, or it'll be control point. They'll have a percent until they cap. Being aware of that is very important when you're considering, say, re-engaging. So say they are pushing the payload, and it's like right down there where I'm looking, and we're all trying to regroup. Well, we need to be aware of how much time do we roughly have before it gets to the end of the point, and then we need to min-max our time to try to get in the best position we can before they get there. But don't go too fast, don't go too slow. Take the fight the right way based on the amount of time that we have. You don't need to rush in if you have plenty of time, and if you don't have enough time, you have to rush in even if you're not fully ready for the fight. Another thing you need to know, and I think most high-level players know this, but lower-level players may not be aware of this, there are, well, we all know there are voice lines in the game. I don't remember the button. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. There it is. Okay. So there's actual voice lines you can equip in Overwatch. But these actual voice lines, the enemy can hear these. So if you're running around spamming voice lines, you can be heard. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, say that your whole team died, but you're still alive, and you're just hiding right here waiting for your team to get back. If you have a bad habit of spamming these voice lines, they can hear that, and they'll go, wait a minute, who's spamming those voice lines? And then they'll come look and find you, and then you'll die. So be aware that those can be heard by the enemy as well. You can also use them to taunt the enemy, although I wouldn't encourage it because it's kind of toxic, depending on how you do it. But yeah, you can, enemy can hear voice lines. Another game mechanic that you need to be aware of is a little bit complicated. I don't have a name for it. So some characters like Sombra, Hammond, and Tracer, and maybe others, can do this thing where they can manipulate the enemy position simply by attempting a back cap on purpose. Now, Eichenwald is not the best example of this, but there are some maps where, say they want to control this point, but maybe the place that they want to hold is some high ground that's hard to get onto, that's further away from the point. Well, someone like Sombra or Hammond, what they can do, Sombra, for example, could throw her translocator up there and then appear on the point and kind of hide. It'll start ticking up, and they'll notice, and they'll come around, and they have to deal with it. And now you can fight them, and then, you know, a Sombra recall, for example, with Sombra, and then, you know, go back in, grab a health pack, get back in, and just contest their backside like this over and over and over again. And then that will force them away from the position they want to hold. Now all 5 of them can't just sit on some high ground or something, even though this is not the high ground you want to sit on. This is not good. Anyway, but you don't, they all 5 can't just sit somewhere AFK watching a choke, because now at least one person has to go get on the point, and it'll usually, in most cases, they'll all just kind of be like, okay, I guess we're all just going to play back some. We can't hold this position because they have a Sombra. We can't hold this position because they have a Hammond or a Tracer or whatever. So that is a game mechanic that you can use. You can also use it to sneak getting a tick like this or something like that as well. And that can affect the game. That's one strategy that can play out in a game that could potentially make you win the game. Another tip, and this one I'm just going to tell you to make sure you're aware. Most people should be aware, but let's just double check. When you are attacking, especially as a DPS or defending, whatever, when you're playing the game, if you are playing a character that's actually meant to kill people, your ideal goal is to kill their support players first. If you can kill the healers, the rest of the team will crumble real fast in Overwatch. Now, the support players aren't always easy to get, and a good support player knows how to make you suffer to try to get them, basically, make it as hard as possible for you to get them. But if you kill both support players, the other team almost always loses. Although in Overwatch 5, there's a little bit more potential for people to spam their ultimates and get like 4 kills or something and solo carry. There's more solo carry potential. But ideally, in a general setting, support players are your main priority. If they go down, your chances of winning the fight go through the roof. All right, well, I saved one of the most important tips for last. So, cover. High-level players should know most of this, but let's make sure we're all on the same page. Don't just stand out in the open for no reason. There's a lot of times you will, especially tanks. Tanks should just stand out in the open in a lot of situations, and you'll learn the nuances of it. But if you're actually in a fight with someone, so say I'm fighting, it's not a good example of Sombra because she needs to hold her button, but someone who's like Cassidy or Ashe, who's just gonna, you know, do something like this, you can just peek like this. You can play near this, and then you get shot at. You're like, okay, let's go grab the health pack, you know, and then you can, you know, play a corner, use your cover. Or you can even do something like this, where you can be like fighting over something like this and then dropping down like this in order to get damage on someone and not totally get screwed. Or even like this and be fighting like this and then be able to back up like this. So anything with cover, generally your goal is to be in a position where they're going to be out in the open and you're going to be somewhere where you can make one quick movement and they can't hit you anymore. So that's kind of your general goal with cover. That's also why high ground is so good, because high ground creates cover when there shouldn't be. So if they're right there, I can get cover by literally just backing up like this. Whereas for them, they got to go all the way in here or all the way in there. And it gets more pronounced if they're like way out there, because then I can get cover by literally just crouching, and they can't get cover without like a long walk to a different position. So learning cover, learning how to use cover correctly, and knowing when to use it, when not to use it is extremely important, and all high-level players generally know how to use it to their advantage in order to get advantage over you. All right, that's all the tips I have for you today. There's definitely more tips that I could give you, but this video is probably very long at this point. I didn't keep track as I'm going because I just wanted to just lay out as many tips, more than you could possibly, memorize at once. So those are a lot of good tips. If you're a new player, a lot of those will help you out a lot. If you are a seasoned veteran, there's probably at least 1 or 2 of those that you didn't realize before that hopefully will help you out. And my main goal with this was just to help you guys better understand Overwatch. I've been playing this since Season 1. Love this game. Big fan. I've gotten really good at it, and I just want to share some of what I've learned and all the tricks that I've learned with someone else. So hopefully this helped you out, and hopefully now you have a better understanding of how to play Overwatch 2.